Hey folks, Rob Flux here with another Real Deal in the Field, and today I'm here with Ravi, one of my former students. Hey mate, in a really interesting project in Ermington in New South Wales, just near Parramatta. Now, this has a lot of different idiosyncrasies with regards to the site. On the surface of it, it looks like a duplex, but there's actually a couple of little twists and turns with regards to that, because it's also on a splitter block. Okay, and for those of you who don't know, a splitter block is two lots on one title. So technically, Ravi has used the duplex rules to build two dwellings, but has actually created two houses out of the process. And if you look very, very, very carefully just between us, you'll see a tiny, tiny gap in between the buildings, which actually means that they are completely on their own titles and hence freehold title all by themselves. Nice, simple, easy process. So firstly, congratulations, mate. So you got this deal off market. So
right.
Tell us how that came about being your very first deal.
Sure. So when I was ready to do my first project, I was very active in the market. So every Saturday, I'm on the selected suburbs, the green light suburbs, to build the relationship with the agents, to understand what the market prices are, because the market is continuously moving. So during that process, I built relationships with a couple of agents. And then I was working, there's a couple of other sites which was very close to get across the line, but couldn't get through. So the agent was confident that I'm a very serious buyer.
Yep.
So through that way, he will always bring me sites before he lists it. And this is a good story. After the Christmas break, after the New Year, I was just texting him, "Happy New Year, mate, how are you?" And then he immediately calls me back saying, "Hey, Ravi, I've just got a listing, which I'm going to put it in the market. Do you want to have a look?" So that's how...
So your relationship has actually brought that about by
100%.
by keeping active in the market and that sort of thing, even over the Christmas break, which is something for you guys to keep in mind is build those relationships. It takes anywhere from 5 to 8 different contacts with your agent for them to actually know who you are, remember who you are, and make sure that you're actually serious. So you were very active in that. Now, you told me a funny story about when you came to do the inspection on the property, mate.
Yep.
So give them the short version of that story.
Sure. All right. So just a couple of days before I was on to be on the site, I actually had a bit of a small accident with the car. So where I broke my rear windscreen, and then I didn't have a car basically. So I could have just sat back and waited for a week, but I didn't want to do that. So I have a bike. So I rode my bike just through the river, and I inspected the site first time on my bike.
So you look like a serious buyer. Fully loaded with all the cash when you're turning up on your push bike, right? So,
that's right.
Now, luckily, because you knew the agent, then that kind of made sense. And
correct.
Speaking of push bikes, here comes one right now. So as you can tell, folks, we're actually on, I guess, the back street here, because there's a main road on the other side of this. It's an interesting
road.
So Victoria Road, one of the, I guess, a really big thoroughfare. That in itself had some issues and challenges that we can talk to a little bit later.
That's right.
But because it is a main road, because there's a likelihood of more cars coming through, why don't we pop on into the inside and we can actually hear a little bit more about your project.
Sure.
See you soon, folks. Hey, folks, we've just come inside. We're actually just on the inside of the garage. Now, as we touched on before, Ravi, this is technically two houses, but you actually did a duplex process to construct the dwellings. These are kind of semi-detached per se.
Yep.
And then you've split the titles through the land registry process in order to actually separate the titles. So you didn't have to go through all of the different issues and challenges with council. Does avoid a little bit of your council contribution fees and that sort of thing, which is very handy for anyone out there doing that. But there were some really interesting things with regards to this garage that we're going to talk about, and some challenges you had up front. Before you actually could go through the process, you had some challenges with a tree that was very, very poorly located, right in between where these garages are going to sit. So give us a little loophole for people to start to think about. So it's not what you do, folks, it's the order that you do things and actually planning things out. What was the little loophole that you worked out how to get rid of a tree that was actually potentially going to get in the way of your project?
Sure. A little bit about the vendor first. So the vendor's husband was a horticulturist. So he had a lot of trees, which is looking good, but unfortunately, we can't retain them all. So immediately after, or even during the cooling off period or before the settlement, I get an arborist involved. We did all the assessment. He gave a report. So through that, a number of trees were able to be removed without council permission, but there was 2 trees which unfortunately I couldn't get it off through those process. So
they're protected, and this is where you had to use your creative solution.
Exactly, that's right. So basically what I have to do is I have to apply with the council to extend my existing garage just for the garage from a single to a double. So in order to do that, the tree has to go. That was my request.
So being clear, folks, the existing house still in existence was a single car garage, turning that into a double garage and applying to remove that before he did, I guess, the CDC process for the duplex side of things. So it's about thinking about the steps involved in the process. So that was an actual development application through the council.
Through the council, yeah.
Minor work type works with regards to the garage. Given that there's not much car parking in the area, fairly easy decision for council to make to say, yeah, we'll let you build your garage.
Yeah, it was not a protected tree, but just that it didn't meet the criteria. It was tall. So therefore I have to go through that process. Time consuming, a little bit money involved, but finally we get the outcome.
But effective nonetheless. And then once the tree is approved to be removed, you don't necessarily have to build your garage. If you change your mind, if you want to go on and do something else, that is perfectly okay because you actually had permission to remove the tree.
I changed my mind after getting the DA approval.
Of course, like it was never planned that way. Like, right. Of course, I wasn't trying to infer otherwise, Ravi. How dare you suggest that, mate? Anyway, so now that we've actually got that, we've now got the approvals in place. You've started the construction, and next door is an example of something very, very similar to what you've actually gone and done. But you did something super creative here, mate, that a lot of people don't think that they can do, and that you've done, I guess, a granny flat above the garage. Now, that is, you can see next door, it's actually referred to sometimes as a Fonzie flat. Now, for any of you who are, I guess, old as I am, so you see next door has actually built another one of these Fonzie flat things as well. For anyone who is as old as I am, if you remember the old TV show Happy Days, the Fonz or Fonzie used to live in a little garage, just a little attic, just like that, just above the garage, and hence where it got its name. But basically, that is an extra source of revenue for whoever's going to live here,
100%.
Sitting on top of the garage. So well done for thinking of that.
That's
so you got 2 of those, one in each dwelling, matches next door in the process as well.
Correct.
Now, speaking of next door, they hadn't done their project when you acquired this site.
That's right.
So you've done a feasibility and that sort of thing, I guess, in putting yours together. But when they've gone and sold those, they've got a super interesting price that was quite a bit above your original FISO. So your FISO is looking good, yeah?
Yes. Hopefully it'll look even better when it is finished because of the market conditions. Yeah, right. So just to add up on that, so this type of product is not very common in this suburb. Council doesn't generally allow you to build these products unless it meets some specific criteria. So there was limited examples for me to do the FISO. So I did that FISO like a year and a half back before all this was done, but they got a very good result, like 100, 150K more than what the actual price was in my FISO. Which adds up to the overall profitability.
That's 150K per dwelling more. So that's another 300K that you can anticipate is going to land in your budget at the end. And then on top of that, the market has moved since then. So we're looking, I guess, quite optimistic at a very healthy outcome. A little bit premature to say, what those final numbers are, but Ravi's going to share all those with an upcoming Real Deal at our Sydney meetup. So we'll get to know all the numbers soon enough, folks. Mate, let's pop inside and find out a couple of other little quirks about this project. Okay, we're inside the house now. Tell us a little bit about the dimensions and I guess what is the fit out here, mate. So how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, that sort of thing?
Sure. So we are in the living and kitchen area. So this is the living, and that will be an open plan concept. And further down, you can see there'll be 1 bedroom on the ground floor. Opposite to that will be a full bathroom. And then there'll be a laundry, ground floor, and then stairs leading up, where we got 3 bedrooms, 1 master with ensuite, and then the study nook. So totally 3 bedrooms on the first floor, 1 here, makes it 4 for the main dwelling. And then as Rob mentioned before, the Fonzie flat, which has its own bathroom, as well.
Which is technically a one-bedroom studio.
Correct. It's a one-bedroom studio. So all in all, 5 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms in one lot, double that.
Times 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So not a very good outcome, mate. So congratulations. Now, in order to do that, I guess some creative thinking's gone into that. I guess there's never just yourself doing these projects and that sort of thing. So you had a whole bunch of the community actually trying to help you out. How do you pull together a team like this, and who are the people that you kind of used in that process?
Yeah, so a couple of sources. Obviously, the PDN network is of great help. There's a few people who have done this before, and there are a few people who are actually in the industry, like traffic arborist that I got was actually through the community, and the mentors, in NSW and Queensland. Shihan, who was a mentor, who was also of great help. The surveyor was through him. So it's a few people who helped in the project to get me the contacts, tried and trusted contacts, because I can rely on them instead of you building the relationship. And then some through my personal contacts, either through a personal network or through the agents or whatever.
And you had a couple of students that are actually helping you out as well. So I guess we run a 12-month education mentoring program for anyone out there, and Ravi was one of our students, as we touched on. But who were some of the students that kind of tapped in and helped you out and gave you good contacts and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
Let's name and shame them.
Sure.
Because they're successful in their own right.
Yeah. So Joe was the person who helped with the arborist. Hani was the person who helped with the traffic control. He did all my traffic control plans, and he's now currently helping me with something else as well. Shihan, who was the mentor for NSW, was also helpful. And then Tony Gallagher was here. I mean, he just was interested and curious to know how I'm doing. So he was here.
Help you out. Tony's a builder by trade as well.
Right.
So lots of tips and tricks and that sort of thing. So
100%.
Mate, this is always something that comes together with many people. Super proud of all the achievements that you've actually done. There's one more little challenge that we're going to talk to. We mentioned Hani before as a traffic engineer. We're going to go and talk to a traffic management issue in just 2 secs, folks. So come with us. We're just going to pop out to what is technically the back, but actually the front. Okay, so now we're at the back of the property, which is legally the front of the property, but we've actually got access from the rear street because we're actually on a main road here. When I say we're on a main road, we're right on a main road. You can actually see the traffic intersection. You can see the traffic actually banking up. So we're going to speak up a little bit because of the road noise here. Mate, give us some insights. Because of the road noise, what did you have to do acoustically in order to make sure that the house was soundproof inside? Because as you heard before, folks, it's nice and quiet inside.
That's right. So this being on a main road because of the Victoria Road, so I have to get an acoustic report done. So they were on site for 2 weeks. They collected the data and then they produced a report. And some adjustments have to be made in the build to ensure that it is soundproof. So that's part 1. And part 2 was the sewage. So can I talk about the sewer now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are sloping towards the main road just so that everybody understands the problem. And the sewer is actually in the main road. So that caused a little bit of a traffic management issue because you had to dig up the main road, which you can't do when it's a 3-lane highway. You can't do that in the middle of the day, peak hour traffic and that sort of thing. So how did you have to overcome that, mate?
Sure. So for those who don't know, so that's a classified road that is not owned by the council. It's owned by Traffic New South Wales. And because there's no clear way here, so the work has to be done in the night. So from 10 to 4, it can't be done anytime otherwise. So we have to apply for the road occupancy permit. We still have to get council permission. And then the tradies were here around 9-ish. They have to block one of the laneways and they have to do a whole bunch of work by 5-6 hours, 5 to 6 people. And then they get it done overnight.
So lots of traffic cones, people with flashing lights, all those sorts of things in order to do the work. So there's 10 people around watching one person do all the work. That's kind of how that works, folks.
No, in this case, there was a few people working, few more people working. I was here until 2 a.m. that day, so just observing what's happening.
And we might do a tiny little photo of this a little bit later, just so you get some idea. We are talking about literally 1 meter into the road. We had to put all that traffic management side of things around. So as Ravi rightly spoke to, this being a classified road, owned by state government means that anything that you do, they are what is called a referral agency. You need to refer, I guess, decisions to them. That can add delays, can also add costs. And in this instance, definitely added cost to the actual construction side of things. And yet the deal is still actually profitable, mate.
That's right.
Now, folks, I hope you've enjoyed this particular story from Ravi. He's not far from completing, as you can actually see. You can see next door, very, very finished. So they got a cracking outcome. I'm optimistic you're going to get a better outcome, mate. So we're going to hear Ravi's full story at an upcoming meetup. Ravi's based here in Sydney, so it's going to be at our meetups in Parramatta. But we run these in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide, and soon to be Perth. And so if you are looking to learn about the property development process, you should come to one of our upcoming meetups. You can turn up physically, or you can live stream from anywhere around the country. So, mate, thank you very much. Looking forward to hear the full story at that upcoming meetup. And till then, folks, bye for now.